All right, if everybody's ready, we'll get started, and Darcy's going to lead off.
Okay.
I asked you if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. Is it on?
It is.
Okay. Yeah, do we have a format? Like, is there like old business?
Just here's the agenda.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Oh, are we, so we're only missing Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody else is here, that's
We're just
awesome.
missing Jerry.
Can I say something before, as we start?
Sure.
I want to let you know that Representative Allison Hepler is here. Allison, I invited Allison, she's the chair of the Marine Resources Committee, and has been somebody that I always go to about marine issues.
Nice.
No.
So I
Good,
thought
thank you.
it'd be very helpful.
Seated her, because she used to be the house chair.
Oh, I know. Trust me. How do you think she got there the second time?
Kevin said, and I appreciated it.
Okay, public comments, other non-agenda, I mean, there's hardly anybody here. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up?
Are we accepting minutes from last time?
I don't
Oh,
know.
sorry
It's-
about
Yeah,
that.
it's not on there, but we probably should do that. Do we have minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah, and they were brilliant.
Yeah, we got them the next day, or that night.
All right.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes of
I
July
second it.
24.
Yep.
No, all in favor?
Great.
Perfect, thank you.
Work group member announcements. Anybody else have stuff they want to throw out here before we jump into some mapping stuff? All right,
Cruising right along.
great.
Yep, we'd have it.
So, from what I understand, the GIS mapping kit has moved on, that's okay, because GIS mapping was my jam for a long time. So I'm gonna kind of pick up where he left off. Rather than pulling up the stuff that he did, I had kind of spent some time, I apologize for not having these packets already, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, but I wanted to create the baseline sets of paper that we can use for mapping out the clamming, fishing, pogeeing, whatever territories we want. So basically, I took the NOAA chart for Harpswell and I split it into 18 individual little views. And there's some overlap so that if some areas bleed over into the next map, we're not going to miss anything. I have the first 6 maps I think I passed down there. I didn't print enough for everybody. I didn't want to kill a million trees yet until we agree this is a good way to proceed. But basically, the first 6 pages are the west side of Harpswell. It starts up at Middle Bay and goes right down to Potts Point. The next 6 are kind of right through the center, and then the last 6 are the New Meadows side of Harpswell. I'm hoping that these are fine enough scale so that whoever is going to participate in, giving us the data, I don't care if you use paper, pencil, crayon, highlighter, whatever you want to put on here. The idea is this should be blown up enough so that you can follow depth contours, you can see ledges, you can see anything that you would need to see for reference points to really get as fine a scale as possible for the information that we're looking for. I wanted to distribute just this first round to you guys so you could see what I was talking about. And if you think that this is a good approach, we can make bundles of these packets and leave them here at the town. We can distribute them to anybody that you think should have them. I'd like to put them on the town website too so that people can pick whichever map they want and download it and print it. Not everybody's going to need the entire town. People are going to have their different areas that they work in. Kind of bummed Jerry's not here because I'm sure he could focus some attention on different zones. So if this is something that you guys think is manageable and that people could work with, I have done another project similar to this and it was pretty successful. It's pretty straightforward. People don't need to be, super savvy with any kind of computer stuff, literally just a pencil and marking out where you fish and then getting this stuff back to me. And then I can geo-reference it and create the shape files for the different fisheries that we want for Harpswell.
Well, I believe we already had 2 meetings and got a handful of fishermen together because that's what it would take to actually adequately.
We do have, we've got the stuff that Jerry did, which is pretty, it's a great broad scale thing, but for this to be kind of considered, I think, taken seriously by the DMR and have some weight behind it, I'd like us to get as detailed as possible, so that I don't want it to be dismissed out of hand as just like, oh, well, they're just gonna block off this whole bay, or they just want this whole island, or this whole that, so.
We're gonna have to use those maps as some sort of reference, either that or we schedule a couple more meetings that fishermen can attend so they can help fill these maps.
Well, yeah, like, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is what's the best way to get these out to people? Like, I don't mind distributing them. I mean, we can take them to places and hand them out. Like, I'd like to get them in people's hands as quickly as possible, to have people start working on them and have that kind of progress over the next month. And that way, I may have some stuff that I could put together and have for the next meeting to
Yes,
see
and
how it's
like
working.
Bogey fishing can be very vague, but aren't you required to drop coordinates every time you purse up? You have been for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah.
So that'd be a good way of
Yep.
identifying those fishing grounds. I don't know, if it would only take just one set, but if you see, people routinely setting in certain areas, and that would be considered a bogey
Yeah.
fishing ground.
I think the more I thought about it after last time, we had kind of talked about this, like, in my mind last time, I was thinking, like, ideally, like you're saying, like, you get everything down to, like, as fine a scale as possible and make things as black and white as possible to avoid as much conflict as possible. But kind of, the more I thought about it, it's, in the end, it's not gonna be, it's gonna be more gray and vague, I think, of a picture than what, would be ideal, but you're just not gonna, I mean, there's large areas of the bays that are just,
Yeah, and no, that's
draw a
legitimate.
square, I mean, it's.
That's totally
and at the end of the
legitimate.
day, I don't think it's, the more I thought about it, because it's like, yeah, I could take that and I could draw a line everywhere I have a string. I'm not gonna do that. I wouldn't ask anybody else to do that. We're not trying to publish a, how to fish gear in Harpswell
Right.
map. I'm not gonna,
No, but you
I'm not
can,
gonna have
no.
it posted on the town website where every berth in town is, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's gonna be more vague than what would be ideal, and, because obviously we're trying to avoid conflict,
Right.
that's the main, and so,
I
but
think,
at the end of the day, I mean, anything is better than what we've got. And
Exactly.
There's always gonna be some gray area.
yep,
And I think at the end of the day, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think what the focus should be to err on the side of existing uses.
yep,
And, because we're always gonna be getting applications, whether, regardless of this, there's gonna be applications coming in. And then we can, there's still gonna have to be conversations, moving forward about whether things are appropriate here or there.
yep. And I think that also feeds into, if you guys are still have the appetite for it, doing kind of a first round of like, here's where everybody's fishing right now, but I think it's also important to designate historically valuable areas for
Yeah.
both shellfish and lobstering and bogeying. Those might maybe carry a different weight if DMR is gonna review stuff, but at least if it's there, it's enough, it's something for someone coming in with no information to look at and be like, oh, maybe I don't wanna try for there if they've got stuff going on already. Like, right now, it's just a wide open map and no one knows anything when
Right.
they come and apply, so half the time, I feel like we could avoid a lot of the hard feelings and confusion if at least we get the information out there and,
Yeah. And
That's
I
a
mean,
starting point.
I think just as much as it's valuable to avoid hard feelings and confusion between applicants and, fishermen in the town, I think it would be equally as admirable of a goal to try and avoid that between DMR
Yep.
and the fishermen in the town,
Yep.
because in the past, there have been existing uses that have been told.
well, and that's why we
Sorry.
need to find that middle ground where it's covering enough territory so that you feel comfortable that your areas that you use regularly are represented, but
Right.
it can't be like all of Quahog Bay, you know
Well,
what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
It can be most of it, it can be 80% of it, but we have to have some sort of delineation that shows that, we made an effort to get the actual information, and we're trying to be transparent about it, and this is what we need. And
Yeah.
it is gonna be a lot of territory, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, I mean, on the west side of Harpswell, you could essentially draw a line from the lower end of Lower Goose south in Harpswell, in Harpswell waters, and that's it. I mean, you're not gonna get anything in below that,
Yeah.
so.
And these smaller copies are gonna make it even more vague. That's why we blew those up,
Mm-hmm.
to be a little more precise about it.
Well, I mean, there's, in the areas where there is less fishing that occurs, I mean,
Yeah.
it'll be helpful to,
It's hard to map stuff too, like pogeing, for example, because
Yeah.
where guys set nets is already dependent on what gear is around there, like they're not gonna set around an oyster farm that's there, or
Right,
a
well,
bunch
like,
of traps.
they were up
That's
ahead of
very
Long Cove.
depth dependent,
they
they're
were at
not-
Long Cove today, and I know there's pogey in there because I see them sometimes in the morning. So you can designate the whole mouth of Long Cove as pogey ground up to, I don't know how close they get to the shore. I don't know if they can set right up against the shore, if they're 15 feet off the shore. I mean, that's the kind of thing that
Yeah.
I'd like to ask those guys, like,
yeah, it would definitely be good to talk, well, I mean, yeah, you'd have to, talk to Chris Hole and,
Yeah.
handful of guys, but,
Like I said,
That's
it's
kind of
kinda,
what-
I do it, it's depth dependent, like, we're not gonna set out in the middle of the river in 25 fathom,
Right.
30 fathom, we try to set in stuff that's like 10 fathom or shoaler, so with pogie fishing, they're migratory fish, they're not gonna come back to the same exact areas every year, and it's kinda dependent on what's in and around those areas. But basically, kinda what I'm getting at is, pogie fishing happens anywhere 10 fathom or less, so I mean, anything that's 10 fathom is pogie grounds right now.
if we
it's
can
one of the more.
figure out a way.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, maybe like hit, okay, where did everybody do well this year? Not to give away anybody's fishing grounds and stuff. I know there's like we don't want to be. ruining
There are
everybody's life, but
areas that are more traditional, for it than.
At least lock those in, and then, we can make that part of the notes that, this is a rich pogey area, and that really they're everywhere, but at least,
Are those coordinates that fishermen are required as that public info, or
I'm not sure.
I think you could get it from DMR if you made a FOIA request.
because you could really boil it down?
Well, proprietary information is protected.
But if it's in groups of more than 3, it's not considered right. I can't say that word, you know what I mean? That's one of the tongue twisters for me.
I didn't say anything.
I've got a point to make. Getting all this information is gonna take a lot of time. We can do it 10 different ways or 100 different ways. But again, we need to try to find areas where we can say aquaculture can go here.
Yeah.
So again, I mentioned this last meeting, is it easier for us to identify areas where it can go as opposed to, instead of places where they can't go? Like, do we want to spend a little bit of time trying to think about, the science behind it? Okay, you fish in 10 fathom or less, and pogey fishermen, we can do the science.
Yeah.
That's gonna take a long time to build a model. Would it be easier to find areas where like aquaculture would be great there, because there's not a lot of guys that fish out. There are some every once in a while.
Yeah.
But that might be a good area there.
I-
Like, let's maybe try to find areas where we can
Yeah.
say, like, go there.
I think that it's a really good point that probably would be easier, but at the end of the day, then we don't have, like, you're still gonna have people that fill out applications for an aquaculture lease here, there, or anywhere, and, it's having that documented, this is being used, versus not, you know what I mean? Like, just
But
because
like
we
you
say this is where the aquaculture should be, doesn't mean that's where people are gonna apply for aquaculture.
But if we go through and we say, just like you said, from Lower Goose Island down, I see fishing activities in all those coves and all those places. I'm sure there's a nook and a cranny every once in a while where people aren't.
Right.
But definitely, probably
But
further
during
up the
the-
bays, what I'm thinking in my head for aquaculture, probably, there's less guys fishing, just the
Yeah.
trends.
Yeah.
Like, we can probably put our heads together and try to find areas that are probably more appropriate for aquaculture, just starting with something, and then really identify the highest value fishing grounds, like Whale Island or something, like the places that are just,
Yeah,
Broad Sound. I mean, there are places where, like,
right.
you can't put, it's not that hard to figure out, just go out there in October and see the buoys are, but.
Right.
I agree with Billy. I think it would be much easier to kind of pinpoint areas where they can go, because, I mean, you see it out there. I mean, 99% of the ocean is in use now by somebody, or whether it's a fishery, a recreational boater, a clammer, a pogey guy, you know, I mean, there's very few of those areas that Billy's talking about, and we can kind of say then, like he was saying, like, these are the only areas left. Every other area is being used by lobstermen, clammers, pogey fishermen, or whatnot down the line. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's definitely easier and is an important part of doing this, but at the same time, you need to be able to have the information to
I think we need
I'm saying do
show-
both. I'm saying do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
I'm just saying to get our, so this is meeting number 4, and we have done nothing. That we haven't done anything. And we have to, at some point, start to move forward with something. And saying no, 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 no doesn't really work anymore. We have to say, you know, let's try to find a place, like, we gotta do something at some point. Either
Yep.
set up a meeting and bring these things and where people can start marking stuff down, but we can't keep talking about it. We gotta come up with some way
Well, I mean,
where,
I think that looks more proactive too, because you're going to the state and then saying, it's almost like inviting aquaculture. You could say, all right, we found places where they can go, here they are, instead of making the other map saying, no, none can go here.
Yeah.
And coloring in 90% of the bay or 95% of it. I think it would look better to come to the state with a more positive aspect, where it almost sounds like we're inviting aquaculture in, but we've already determined where it can go when we invite it in. I just think it's.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to identify areas that it would be well suited for aquaculture, but you're gonna get, people aren't only gonna apply for aquaculture leases in the area that you say is a good area for it.
Right.
no, I get
Which
that.
is
But
why
we're gonna have a
you-
map that says, these areas are high-value fishing areas, not a good place for aquaculture.
Right.
There's a spot over here, and then there's some in-between areas where there's some conflict. But again, I think, in my brain, like,
Right.
we've only had 1 hour a month. This is meeting number 4. We haven't really done anything. We have to start doing something at some point. And 1 hour a month is not gonna get anything done. We should probably meet more. We should probably have a plan in place. And we have to go out in the community, whether it's a workshop or something like that, to get the information. But, I mean, you guys are on the water, but it's not really your responsibility to tell us, you know, where people should go. I mean, we need to get the information though. We need to get the information somehow to figure out where people can go and where they should not go.
Yeah.
I mean, I can figure out where they should not go, but, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking about the easiest way to go about this, I guess, is to point people in the right direction. Like, dude, don't go there, that's not a good idea, but maybe think about that area, just kind of like
I think
brainstorming.
if you want to base it on an ecological aspect, stay out of constricted currents, and, you know, because you've got bottom culture and you've got top culture. There's different variants to that where you can succeed or not.
So we should write that down.
You
We
should
should
stay
say,
away from any deposition on that bottom that complements or influences the immediate area or cove behind it. Stay away from it. So, I mean, constricted currents, you can, depth chart shows you where your constricted currents are. Stay out of them, you know what I mean?
I think bottom type is important too, you know, there's certain bottom types, you know, that are important to other fisheries, you know, and having, like David can speak to that some, I'm sure there's no clams growing on top of Lambeau Ledge, you know?
The reason why I say that, because I've seen spots, I've seen people get really in-depth where they want to put that, and there's variables to it, people may not know, but even when you're just floating it on the water, what you can benefit if you orientate that in the right place, in the right area. And it just so happens, you know, all that benefit is providing the natural resources. So
Right.
you should, that in turn, you should stay right out of it, simple as that.
so part of what we can do is we can do a map, but we can also write down things that we think are appropriate, not appropriate.
Yeah.
So the things you just said, we need to write those down and say, we don't want aquaculture in places that just constricted currents.
I mean, I think we can have a map as big as we want, but it's still that there's a persistent applicant, come before us. Who knows, you know? I don't want to map out an area and say, no way, you're never going to, because things change. So, I mean, just having a map, you know, it can be vague, but as long as that applicant's willing to come, and, you know, so we know exactly what's gonna happen, you know? We see the application, yeah.
So from a staff perspective, I would like the committee to think about a rule change to require, so LPAs, applicants come to the town first. They have to have the harbor master signature to move forward. Experimental and standard don't require that, and that would save the applicant a lot of hassle if they could come talk with the town first before they spend all the money to submit an application and then have the town say, this doesn't work, like on the town's
Right.
evaluation.
I agree. How many times have we had people come in and we've been able to say, hey, that doesn't work, but you can move here, you know? So I agree completely.
I think we definitely need that, but also, I just want you guys to keep in mind, like, the tool that we're using is to going by that very specific list that the department uses when they approve or not approve somebody's lease site. And fisheries conflict is a very specific item on there. So I don't want to completely give up on establishing where the fisheries areas are for wild resource and for lobstering and stuff. I think we need all of these approaches. But let's just keep that in mind too. Like, it's a,
But we as a committee need to, you know, we have to protect fishermen, because we've seen in the past, that, you know, there was a handful of fishermen that opposed, and it still happened. There was
Right.
two. So, you know, their criteria list, that's vague.
well, right,
Question
but.
for you, the ones that were approved, did the towns, did Paul sign off on those?
No, I'm not talking about this town particularly.
Oh,
Right.
Neighboring
Gotcha.
town, yeah, just.
Just other towns?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, Paul, you're talking about a statewide rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which would be legislation. And I think we're talking a two-prong approach. We want DMR to be hearing from us and listening ideally, and we want to be able to inform fishermen.
Yeah, there's ways to
But people
improve
will
the
still
system,
apply.
like by doing this, but then also, let's just shore up and kind of,
Well, right, because, because right now, the only thing that, like you say, the Department of Marine Resources can only deny a lease application based off of a few criteria.
Right.
And constricted currents isn't one of those, so like.
right. But
you know, we
impeding
could say-
navigation, fisheries conflict, those are on the list, so.
And So, that's why it's important to map out the areas
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
existing uses, because that's the only, because the state doesn't have to or can't, according to, you know, the way DMR has always talked in the past. It's like, unless it conflicts with one of these,
Yeah,
whatever those are, 6, 7 things, they have no choice but to grant the lease, regardless of what the town thinks a good place is.
Honestly,
So-
I mean, the only thing I feel in my mind that I'd love to see change is, you know, we've already got 2 impediments on that criteria list. Why wouldn't the impediment of constricted currents that provides all that nutrients for all local native, why wouldn't that be part of that criteria list?
Well,
And it'd be so simple to implement, like.
well, I mean, so like, I think if we want to go in that direction, like, you're looking at different timelines for this stuff to happen. Like, for us to create a town-sanctioned map that says, here's our fishing areas, that's fairly straightforward. I know Billy thinks it's going to take forever, but I think we can accomplish that ourselves in a reasonable timeline, and then that's one kind of stepping stone that's right there. Changing, you know, their criteria list, you're opening a can of worms that, I'm not saying like we can't do it, but that's definitely a statewide, you're going to bring in a bunch of other political entities that are going to have all different opinions about that. They're going to want studies to determine what's the baseline, who measures it, how do we know. It could happen, but I think you're talking about, that's something that might take years before it actually got rolled into the process. So we can definitely work on that, but I would like to see us grab some low-hanging fruit and shore up what we know we can do, starting with the list that already exists, while we're also working on the other stuff.
Well, if you can get that information for the coordinates for, you know, the
Pogies,
pogie fishing
yep.
catch, I mean, that's what better way. It's either that or try to gather up every pogie fisherman in town and ask them.
I mean, I'll go
I mean,
track them down, there's
Yeah,
not
I
that
mean-
many of them.
I mean, some workshops definitely.
Yep.
Seems like, you know, it's gonna be necessary, I mean, on top.
I'll send an email to Meredith, and I'm sure she's given me information in the past, like all the federal permit holders. I'm sure she can give me coordinates for pogie landings and stuff like that. But I just think back to that, I know for a fact that there's an application for a lease in the New Meadows that is moving forward that has had dozens of pogie catches within that, and there's coordinates backing it up, and the state's still going forward with it.
if they approved
Is that
it,
by Bombazine?
Yeah.
if they approved it.
No, but it's still going through the process, yeah.
Is it in, it's in Harpswell? It's-
Yes. Yep.
But not approved yet,
No,
so it could die.
it could,
That's a top culture lease too, isn't it?
yes.
And it's a fine example of an aquaculture shopping with his LPAs, finding out that sweet spot and congregating everything he's got right beside a very good shellfish spot. And that's the only reason why it's so good, is because it's a constricted current, there's a deposition on the bottom. I mean, we put all that in that equation and we're apt to lose it because of that. I'm not taking that risk.
And that's why I think we have to do bottom type, because you don't want to be putting them on a shellfish bar, you know, like, we should label all of that type of
I
stuff.
think we should try to identify the constricted currents, number one. I think that should be goal number one. That would be a
Yeah.
lot easier than going through every freaking code
Yep.
in the
Yeah.
town of Harpswell. 200, how many miles we have? 270 miles? We need to find some way to identify the highest value areas.
Yeah.
It sounds like you think the constricted currents is the biggest issue.
Yeah.
So if that's the biggest issue, let's tackle that first. Let's figure that out, whether it's on the, let's get that information.
Yeah.
Well,
Highlight
that-
that, be like, no aquaculture here.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I'm hearing from you. I think we should do that.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think back like 6, 7 years ago, if this was happening to me and you guys are doing this, like on top of how difficult it is in the process, I couldn't imagine going through the mental trauma, going against something like this, and I don't want that for people.
No.
You know what I mean? I want, but do what I did, make sure that you're not in a constricted current, make sure you talk to every person you can before that goes there. I mean, of course, I'm not doing top culture, I'm doing bottom culture. So I'm trying to make something of a dead zone I've never seen there since I've lived in Harpswell. I'm
Yep.
trying to make something of it.
Right.
Because it is true, if you're gonna deny that, like, where you orientated could mean everything, then you're kidding yourself.
Right.
So,
I agree.
But because not everybody would do the due diligence you did,
I just, as much as I want to farm, I don't want to cause a negative impact.
right, but unfortunately, not everybody feels that way.
Well, there's, a lot of people don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting,
Yeah.
they need to know.
I know in our committee, if we had a map that showed us where constricted currents were and if there was aquaculture lease going that for the area, we would say no. But again, we don't have that information, so I think we should get that.
Yeah.
That would be powerful information to have. That should be goal number one, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, it's important, but it's nothing that the Department of Marine Resources.
It doesn't matter,
will
if we
recognize.
identify it as an area that's highest value for wild harvest, that the town of Harpswell says, this area is an area.
Doesn't matter.
But we have to do something, we have to map something.
Map the existing uses of commercial
And
fishing.
constricted currents.
Well, I know, and that, but constricted currents doesn't mean anything to the Department of Marine Resources when it comes to aquaculture.
You can label it as a high-value fishing area, though.
Well, I know, but unless there's
You're gonna
fishing
find-
that's going on, unless
Yeah.
there's.
But you're gonna
you know what
find
I
that
mean?
you're gonna see an overlay.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
You're gonna
it's.
see a tremendous overlay.
Oh, yeah, there's gonna be a massive amount of overlap.
With the lobster, with
bogey
bogey,
and
with
all kinds of
everything,
stuff.
like.
But it just doesn't, by itself, like, I don't necessarily think that we need to like identify that as like our one top goal, because it wouldn't mean anything. But it's obviously an important part of the piece of the puzzle, but.
Well, considering that we had 2 meetings and we did have a few fishermen show up in helps with that map, maybe we schedule a workshop with Jerry, and put those maps back on the table and implement them into these. And you're gonna find that constricted currents and, high-value fishing grounds existing, they overlay, you're gonna see quite an overlay in
Yep.
it, as it is, so.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get, in conjunction with Jerry and whoever else, but, try and get some workshops put together where you can get as many clam diggers, bogey fishermen.
Yeah. And if you
Most
got more
as you can.
copies of these, I mean, I'll probably
I don't think this room's big
double
enough.
size these actually.
Hmm?
So,
I don't think this room is big enough.
No, I'm thinking.
The school or something.
The gym.
Yeah.
I mean, as many guys as you can get, because the more,
I think you could break it up kind of like we did earlier in like different parts of the town too. Have a meeting with the West Hartsville guys
Yeah.
over at like
Yeah,
the
you
Scout Hall, have a meeting down on Oars Island with the Oars Island, Bailey Island guys at the schoolhouse, in Cundy's Harbor at the fire station,
Yeah.
And I think you have a better chance of getting people to attend those than everybody coming all together in one place.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to guys, you got a better chance of them coming out than if you're asking them to come to you.
What do you think the interest is? Do you think anybody think they'll show up? The back of my mind says they're not.
I mean, I think it'll be disappointing. You know, I mean, I think you
Kinda what I
can,
meant.
you know, hopefully,
But we don't.
obviously Jerry was able to get some guys to come out and work with him.
Right, we had like 20, 30 people that showed up when we made those maps earlier, you know, and that was on a whim, you know. We just made a post on Facebook
Yeah.
a couple days before, and we got 20, 30 people, you know, and if we had the town's help, you know, to make a post, you know, and something like that, I think we could do better than people think, you know. I think this is a bigger concern to a lot of fishermen than people really realize. I think guys would come out if they knew that they could actually make a difference.
Yeah,
I agree.
they're better advertised and, you know, in advance,
Yeah.
and all that.
We can send an email out to all the commercial fishermen who have moorings. We have all
Yeah.
the contacts.
And we should also plan it on like, as much as it sucks, like a Sunday or in the evening. Like you can't do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. Everybody's fishing, you know. So I mean, we got to take that into account too.
Well, you only got a couple of Sundays left.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not fishing on Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just,
Or just-
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we'll get as many people as we can, you know, the more people contribute to it, the more validity it has,
Yep.
you know? It's just the goal.
And that's kind of another thing, like, I don't want to, you know, I'm totally good with keeping everybody's personal fishing territories anonymous, but if we can at least have a list of people that contributed, that's going to help to kind of justify where we got our data from.
Or even,
With the state.
or even numbers, just
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, numbers, but I like the idea of licensed fishermen that contributed. Then it's not like, oh, the two guys from this cove that didn't want the farm there. It's,
And I think,
you know, all 49 lobstermen in Harpswell contributed to these fishing areas, and that's why we know they're accurate. So,
I'll send an email out to DMR because I think we can get a lot of that information from them, especially with the pogie fishing, if they'll give those coordinates. And now all lobstermen with federal permits, or all lobstermen actually, are reporting, you know, and they're putting a dot on a map. So that information is supposed to be able to be,
Yeah,
right, it's
I
supposed
know.
to be able to be released.
it's more like, I mean, it's, those are like their statistical areas, because I do landings reports for some of the guys, and they're giant chunks of areas.
No, I put one dot. It's one,
That's
yeah.
That's with the federal versus the state
Oh,
reporting.
okay.
Yeah.
They literally just have you put, not that, I mean, that doesn't really tell you
No.
either.
Yeah.
One.
But it at
one
least,
GPS
it's a start,
That would,
Okay.
literally, the
Yeah.
information's already done.
right, it's a
Well, you
start.
have One GPS coordinate
We need
during the
a-
course of a day of hauling.
I think you're missing Harpswell Sound.
There's like 12 more maps that I just didn't have time to print. They're kind of in a pile here. I ran out of time on the farm today, so.
But I'll reach out to DMR before the next meeting and see if I can get the lobster and the pogie coordinates, you know, all that information from them, because they've made it abundantly clear that they'll release it as long as it's in a group of more than 3.
Yeah. I think it's also going to end up being probably more of the nearshore guys will be more valuable for
Yeah.
the nooks and crannies than the federal guys that go way out. unless-
Well, I mean, I'm a federal guy, but I come way in to start the year. I'm starving
I
in
mean,
June.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it take to set up all these meetings with lobstermen? Like us setting dates now, or how does that go?
Yeah,
Yeah,
2 weeks from now, we could, well,
I think you've got the right idea, Sammy. I think we should,
Definitely.
yeah.
Put in stone if we can do that today.
Yeah, and that gets something
Get
done, you know, we're
somewhere.
moving
Something
forward at
going
least.
on.
I mean,
Again, and then the process, we have to have a process in place to have a plan and get the information we want and need. So you can't just say, show up to a meeting, start
Yes.
drawing stuff on the map. You have to have some type of color coding, some type of a thing where it says, all right, we're working on scalloping from 4 to 4:30.
Yeah.
Like, we want to get that information, get it on the map, like, let's
Nice.
focus on that. And then lobstering from 4:30 to, I don't know. But you gotta be, you can't have everyone come up and doing all sorts of stuff. You
Yeah.
need to have,
You just-
we need to try to find what information do we want and get it from the people.
Have a different colored crayon, marker, whatever you want, pen, different color for different fisheries, and you show up and, what do you know, what do you, oh, I pogie and a lobster, all right, here's your pogie pen, here's your lobster pen.
You could have like a
Yep.
2-hour meeting
We
and
already,
Need a legend.
what did we kind of have a color.
Jerry's got a bunch of colors on his
Right?
stuff, but it does, we can
Jerry's
start,
got
let's
color.
start from scratch and just decide right now what color is each fishery. We'll get a bunch of, materials and pens for that ready, and
Yeah,
if you,
but on top of that, I mean, if we can get that information, you can take care of that right there.
I am skeptical about how detailed that will be, but I will reserve my skepticism till I can see the information. But I don't want us to stop the process.
No, I think that's a good starting point, and then we can fill in those gaps with the individual interviews. But I think the best way, like Sammy said, is we pick a Sunday evening or something a couple weeks from now, and we pick a 2-hour time slot, and say first half-hour lobstermen show up, second half-hour clammers show up, third half-hour pogie fishermen show up, and then you're not getting everybody all at once, it's kind of,
Save the whole thing, but I think it's important for us to set the dates, but before because we may go meet again, we might not have a meeting before we go do this stuff.
right.
We have to have the
Yeah,
colors, we
I
gotta
would-
have the process in
Okay.
place, we gotta have some type of,
I
who's
would-
gonna run the meeting, what's the process, we have
I
this
would
type of
I would schedule it further out in the future than 2 weeks from now. I mean, I think maybe setting dates right now would be appropriate, but not that the workshops would occur until after our next meeting. I mean, 2 weeks from now is you're getting into like Labor Day and stuff. I mean, it's not, September, middle of September would be more,
Yeah,
I mean,
even October.
I don't know if I'd be there 2 Sundays from now.
October would be a terrible month. It's a big lobster month.
I guess we're not gonna go any.
Better than, September's.
September, the September slack spell.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you about.
What's that?
Fair.
Do we want a map or do we not want a map?
We want a
Middle
map.
end of.
We're saying we want a map, but we also don't want a map. We gotta figure out what we want. And a
I think,
process to do
yeah,
it.
I think we want a map. I think we need to have colors for each fishery. I think we need to have people come. So let's,
Do we want a specific map or we want a very vague map? And
So we're gonna.
we're all saying different things. We don't have like.
Well, we want it to be specific. I've just say it's gonna look vaguer than what I had originally kind of envisioned in my mind at last meeting. You know what I mean? Like in the end, even if you're being pretty specific,
Yeah.
it's still gonna look kind of vaguer than what I was originally
I
thinking
think
in
that's
my
okay.
mind,
We
you know
just
what I
need to
mean?
have it be reasonably defendable to the DMR.
Yeah.
To say, we codify that these are fished areas.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
these are the guys that participated in this. And I think,
All we need is a sign-in sheet, when we have the meeting and guys sign in, and then there's your list
Yeah.
of people that contributed.
All of these documents we should be saving
Yep.
and archiving.
yeah,
And obviously the areas where scalloping and pogie fishing and
Yeah.
shellfish
Yep.
and constricted currents, all those things that overlap, we're gonna know, that's not a great place for aquaculture. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Right.
The ones where there might be one shade, we can look at it more, and then really look at that and say, is this actually a good spot?
and also, just so you guys know, I can start georeferencing and creating shape files that can be, ongoingly updated. So I don't need to just have all the information all complete before I start working on this. I can literally have one guy's map of stuff and start creating that shape file and then just add to it as I get more information. So even if we start small and maybe meet with the pogie guys first, aren't they coming close to the quota or something now? I don't know.
They're 90% as of today.
So maybe they won't be so busy in a couple weeks.
But then you got the episodic and the small boat fishery to come still too.
Let's pick an easy fishery to start with and,
Scallop.
I think you get one chance to get people to come. I don't think people are
Yeah,
gonna.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of,
Yeah.
most of the people that go pogeeing or go scalloping
And
go.
Also lobster.
You know what I mean? It would be, we'll just do the workshop. I mean, we could say right now, you wanna just do Sundays and
I
do
just-
three Sundays in a row? One in the harbor, one on, one at, say, the schoolhouse on Wars Island, one at the church or the Grange Hall,
Yeah.
or the, Scout Hall. You
What-
just say the 15th.
22nd and 29th.
The 29th of September.
We're making progress.
If you do the 22nd of September in the harbor, I don't have no problem being the one to be there and lead that one.
I think
Alright.
the committee, everyone in the committee. should
Yeah,
do
everyone
it.
in the-
All right.
This is not just one person.
What days was that?
The 15th, 22nd, and 29th of September.
And which is, which?
Yep, that's actually great for me.
thank
I thought I was gonna be the conflict.
I won't be there on the 15th, but,
What do you wanna make it for an hour, give everybody ample time to?
I would take at least an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I think an hour is enough.
4 o'clock?
Yeah, 4 o'clock, before dinner time, then you can get guys that will stop at 4.
Yep.
And that gives them all day to go do stuff, so they don't feel like they're losing a whole day.
Do we have the power to do this? I mean, we can,
4 to 6.
I'll reach out. Do you guys have a preference on which
Which area first?
area? Yeah, or just whoever can accommodate the space first.
Well, did you want to do the harbor on the 22nd? Is that what you?
I'm just gonna be gone the 15th, is the
Okay.
only reason I said that,
Do the
so.
15th, say, hopefully, well, that's the other thing, I guess, is we gotta make sure that the
Space is available.
Yep.
spaces are available.
I
you
can
wanna
check
do-
with the lady in the harbor and make sure that I can check for both the 22nd and the 29th and see if either one of those Sundays are available at the fire station there in the harbor.
Okay, and then.
And I'm sure that's something, if I check, I can email the group,
Yep.
and say, all right, it's available these 2 days, and then we
Yeah,
can move forward
set
from there.
We can set the which ones.
Yeah, once we
which,
figure out what's
I mean,
available when.
And I'll check on the horizontal schoolhouse.
Who do we have in West Harpswell that can check on a building over there, the Scout Hall? Scout Hall, you think?
Scout Hall,
Or I don't know, where do you think, Sammy?
Or the church.
I think the church.
the
would
church would
be
probably be better.
Yeah, the church.
I can check at the church.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, the church.
So we'll have a meeting.
that might catch on fire when you get some of them fishermen walking in.
Oh, no.
We have a meeting on the 11th.
Co-op has their annual meetings there twice a year.
So our next meeting is on the 11th.
Okay.
So the 15th, the 22nd, and 29th will be good because we can fine tune
Nice.
the process on the 11th
Yeah.
and make sure we.
Right.
So the 11th, we're gonna say, this is how we're gonna run the meetings, this is the information we
Boom,
want.
ready to
This
go.
is kind of like, we can do like a one-off, like have a board, maybe we should print off what we would, like, we're gonna have maps, someone
Yep.
have to like, how do we wanna do this?
Yep.
This may not work in a meeting like that, we probably want to get a big,
But that will be easy, like in the harbor, you really would only need a map of like
That
the
area.
New Meadows,
Yeah.
back spasm, sorry, in Quahog Bay. And then like over in West Harpswell, you
Yeah.
just need that area. You wouldn't need all of Harpswell, like, for each meeting.
do we have any money for funds?
Yeah, we can.
Although,
squeeze some up.
say that, but
Go to
there's like.
Staples.
Yeah, there are those
Like,
few.
The bogey fishing.
Yeah.
Chris Holes have to go bogey fishing anywhere
I think
between
we
Yeah.
East and Booth Bay.
Yeah,
Because there will be some overlap.
yeah, there is, you're right. There are a few lobstermen that go all the way to the
Lobstering's
east.
probably the most segmented of the,
But there's still-
Land diggers dig anywhere in town.
Do you guys have large
Same
scale
with everything
printing?
else.
Like, do you have a
But-
chart
No,
plotter
it's,
printer?
no, it's broken. So we can get it through Staples. I mean, or we can get 3 large NOAA charts too. Would that be,
I think we need to.
you want?
The NOAA charts don't zoom in enough on Harpswell. Like, I can, maybe, I can get something done at Staples. Like, I think this scale so that you can see stuff, I think is good, so I
Right, but
can,
just a little bit.
reconstruct these and have it be-
If you just have multiple sets even.
we
if
can
you
still
just
have
like-
these too. We'll
Right,
still have the
'cause if
little
you had, like-
maps
I mean, if you
and,
just had like 4 sets of those or something
Yep.
going on, one person's working on, and
Yep.
they get passed around.
Yeah, we want the
and,
flow
you know.
to not
Yeah,
be
you just need,
impeded.
you just need enough so that people,
Well, do we want that, or do we want like a board up, like a big map where
I
people
think
walk up
both.
and mark?
I think both. I think have the big board, but then if someone wants to sit down in the corner with some little ones, I don't care where the information is. When I
I'm just thinking, how
georeference it,
does the
it'll
committee
be.
want it? I don't know, I'm trying to think in my brain what makes the most sense.
I mean,
Why not have both?
Yeah.
And then the people that don't want to get up and color on the big one, like
I mean,
Darcy
I
said,
think
could
the-
sit over in the
I
corner.
think I think if I had to pick one that made more sense, the smaller ones make more sense to me, where you could have, like I said, multiple stacks of those. And guy go over and sit down, and you know what I mean, versus being up in the in the big room in front of everybody. This is where I fish. This is where I fish. You know what I mean?
And I think
And
like
you could just have, and then there's multiple sets of those. People can work on them, hand them back in. They're flowing around.
if we solidify these dates too, I think maybe Paul, if you could like send out emails to all the commercial mooring holders, starting now saying, hey, we're gonna have these meetings on these Sundays, in these areas,
Do you want me to wait until we know which?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but once we have that established,
Yep.
I think as soon as we
You
can,
guys can shoot
we
me a
notify
message.
guys.
As soon
Yep.
as you know,
I think
we'll
we're
put
gonna
it
have to
together.
announce this before our next meeting, though, we're gonna have.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So we're gonna have
The
to,
next few days.
That's why I was,
so as soon as we know, as soon as you guys figure out where they are, I think we should
Yeah.
put that out sooner than later.
yeah, I could figure it out by the end of the week for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
We had 4 blown up maps, and we had a color for each fishery, and there were some that were putting, you know, they weren't going all on that specific map, we were jumping around, but that gave people room to come up, you know, a couple at a time.
I myself
Be-
think that like a bigger
be
maps,
similar.
that would be here and another one over there, another one over there, would be easier for people instead of like going through the maps, like, where the hell am I in the cove? Like, it just seems like, in my mind, I think, you know, if you had, you know, things on the wall, several, like, big, you know, they could just kind of like, I kind of fish here and I kind of fish here, like, and you're not trying to draw out the strings, we don't want to get proprietary information, but.
Right, but
you know,
general areas,
But.
yes.
I mean, but
so
you know,
th-
you see where
these,
the
in my
blooms
mind, don't work
are.
as well, like, I think it's better to have.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, the ones that we already.
I think the ones you guys did kind of made sense to me. 'cause
They,
no
they're
one's gonna
actually,
sit-
they're this scale, they're just not one page of it, they're all of Harpswell.
So in my mind, we should have 3 of those at each meeting.
Yeah.
And so, you know, everyone do the blue marker right now for scalloping, and it might only take 10 minutes or something, but you should do one color at a time, one fishing at a time, put those markers away, and then bring out the red ones for lobster and whatever it is.
You should be a school teacher, you're very organized.
But we only have an hour, we're gonna have an hour. We're gonna need to get all the information we need in
Yeah.
those
Well,
3 hours.
Hour, 2 hour. I don't know, I'd say,
We can
When
have
we're-
smaller stuff too, in case like people couldn't make the meeting, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
people find
Right.
out about it afterwards, and then like, we can send them these, and they can do them at home, or they can come see one of us.
right, yeah, I mean, we
Drop
can-
them at the town office.
Right, maybe when
Work-
Paul sends those emails
Or
for
the
the,
workshops.
include a
you
map.
know, I mean, obviously, we wanna try and get as much
Yep.
information as we can at the time.
Make
And
that the
maybe we
big
should,
push.
as far as like trying to, you know, when we're reserving the spaces, maybe we do try and get 2 hours, I think.
It
4
couldn't
to
hurt, because I
6,
feel like
4 to
people are gonna
6.
maybe stay longer if they're
4 to
into
6.
it. And
Yeah.
Sounds,
can we get coffee? Like, is
and
there
then,
any money for that?
but it also, it can be a starting point, you know? I mean, once, you know, having those and it gets the word out and people can always, like you said, take stuff home, contact to get
Yep.
more copies or whatever.
And I think it's important to have the big maps and the whole town at all 3 of these, because someone might not be able to make.
Right.
Harpswell.
Yeah.
Yep.
They go to the other one and say, hey, I'm just making sure that you get, you know, you've got the information. I wasn't able to make the last meeting, but, you know, whatever.
We had, what, 8 people show up over in West Harpswell, and I think there was 3 that showed up in the harbor.
If you guys want to decide like what colors we want for fisheries, I can take care of making the large-scale maps and get the markers and stuff before this, like in case they have to get ordered or whatever, so what color do we want?
I think I emailed.
Red for lobster.
I agree.
Yeah.
green for
Yeah, I was
pogies.
gonna
I think-
say, I mean, if you
I
wanna,
think green for where they think, where aquaculture could go.
All right, yeah, that's a good idea.
Like,
Yeah.
do you guys have any ideas where you think it could go? Like, and we should ask that question, like.
Yeah.
Green's a
if
very
you thought of any
positive
areas,
color.
you know, I'm not saying you guys, I'm saying,
Yeah.
you know, the fishermen. Are there areas where you think it should go? And if they
Alright.
get a little green on the map, that's good for us. That's like,
What about blue for pogies?
I was just thinking blue for
Mhm.
pokies.
I think it's orange right now, well, anyway. it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
And then we can, what color, do you remember what color shellfish were on Jerry's?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, we lost green.
no, you can do green. I'm just saying something where like.
Yeah, I know, yeah, and I like the green because green's like go. You know,
Right.
it's a positive color.
Put it wherever
Yeah.
the green is.
You want to do purple for shellfish? Could you live with that?
I don't care.
You live like
Perfect. I like it.
You'd be like all us lobstermen with our purple marks.
Were you thinking that, you just said it?
No, we've already done all this. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got
Yeah.
big blown up maps that have all this, like, have Jerry bring those to the table, we'll
Yep.
work off them. We still have
So are you
people
talk-
come and-
So are you talking shellfish, like shellfish, or are you talking about aquaculture?
wild shellfish.
Wow.
So would people be marking where aquaculture?
No,
is?
no, none of that is part of this
Okay.
collection, because that all exists. We already know where all that is.
Should we differentiate scallops from, say, shellfish too, probably?
I think so, because it's managed differently.
Right, and scallops are more out.
Or any
Yellow.
other, like,
Dragonfit shellfish, dragonfit
Shows up
oysters
good
are
Yellow for scallops.
Yeah,
Should
yellow.
that
Yeah.
be?
I put
that'd
that
be
right in with the shellfish.
Put it right in with the shellfish,
Yeah.
okay.
Or what if you put scallops and oysters together?
Scallops could be a color of its own, but I think
Mm.
shellfish could pertain to your dragging.
Yeah, cohogs,
Yeah,
Europeans,
yeah.
um,
Versus on the
steamers,
flat.
whatever.
Yeah, versus on the flat.
Yeah.
So you want different colors for them?
No, we
No.
don't.
And then we
No.
need, constricted currents, if anyone knows about those.
Yep, we can add that
If people
in.
have like specific areas that are super high value, like we should have something that's like, definitely cannot go here, absolutely not.
Black?
Black maybe, I don't know, for like a super high value, I would think would be important.
Well, black
Is that
Sharpies
crazy?
are easy to do, so that's.
Pink, something, stand out.
Something that's,
Yep.
White.
All right, and we're gonna want sign-in sheets for the sign-in.
Paula, can you post that on Harpswell Facebook page?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You guys do a pretty good job. I see stuff on there that I care about.
Once we have the dates, we'll make an advertisement out.
Oh, yeah. On it.
Billy, are you saying same color for constricted currents
different
and,
color.
but for high value, same?
We could do both, or something, we can say high value is,
I think-
obviously, the overlay is gonna show high value. but-
Yeah.
but
I think it's
I just know
gonna
there's areas in town where like, it would just be absolutely insane to put aquaculture there, because it's just like, too much going on.
I know millions of places in town where it would be so suitable for aquaculture, but by having these maps, even though they're vague, and by the applicant having to come before us, I don't see a problem with this, I really don't, and it's gonna be the best thing that's gonna happen for
Yep.
us.
Jay, or do you guys have a sense of how easy or hard it would be to just add that requirement in for experimental and standard leases as part of the process?
I think it would be a big deal, but I think it's doable.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be putting a bill in.
you.
having a public hearing.
I'm not a good predictor, but,
Well-
certainly make a case for it.
What would it take to get that rolling?
Not till next year, because I think it would require legislation and that, and session's over, so it would be
Yeah, it's never gonna
January.
Okay.
Yeah, the legislature's not in session till January, but
All
bills
right.
can go in December. But as Darcy said, it's a process.
Yeah,
And
but we could have something ready
Yep.
come
Yeah.
January.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, the sooner we get it going, I think the better off we are.
Yep, and people testify.
Yeah, and then we don't have a concept bill either.
I think we need to find out if it's a rule or if it's in statute. I'm not sure which one, how it
Well, I
operates.
think you,
I think it's a statute.
I think
Statute,
you
what,
need-
the aquaculture leasing program itself?
For,
The steps, though.
The steps, though,
That
yeah.
might be
Oh.
rule.
It might be.
I feel like,
but you'd still need legislation.
Yeah.
to Change a rule.
just a little bit less onerous. but-
yeah.
I mean, as it stands right now, our involvement only goes 5 feet deep, correct? Like as far as our municipality involvement. in-
No, so like like the harbor master questionnaire it's all after the fact though. It's after the applicant's already submitted and it's,
Right.
I just think it's a burden on everybody, the applicant included. They've already submitted all this money and done the proposal and then
Yeah.
there may be a
It's like,
conflict.
it makes so much sense in the
Yeah.
case of the LPAs, why wouldn't it, you know what I mean? It's
Right,
like, why
right.
wouldn't it be a requirement
Right.
of,
I think they structured it thinking like, oh, everyone's gonna go get an LPA first before they go do the big leases, and therefore they'll be captured by the process, and I don't think that's what's happening, so.
no.
I was gonna say, one of the things that I've heard talk about doing, and I'm certainly interested in this, which is why I'm here also, is to change the scoping session at a way to, they're so informal. The DMR doesn't even go to these things because of the way the system is set up to do an quasi-adjudicatory hearing afterwards. So they don't want to be involved at both ends, but I've heard conversations about that in DMR and also with people farmers that I talk to.
I mean, DMR leaves it
Yeah.
up to the applicant to identify if there's an existing fishery there, though. If they're
Right,
not
right.
there
Right.
constant prior to submitting that, I don't see how you can truly.
I love the way that you guys have it with the LPAs, where they gotta come present to the committees. I mean, it's very, right from like square
That would,
one.
I'd like to see that in statute somehow. I think that would help every single town in this state if it was
Well-
in statute that you had to go
I
to.
think that like,
the town.
we may need to make it something like if the town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna
Yeah.
force that on every town. 'cause they
Right,
might be
if
like,
it's,
"What
but
the
you
hell?"
can make it an option,
Right,
if
if
for
the
the town to
town
sign
has-
up for.
Well, like
Shellfish-
it is with the,
shellfish ordinance.
yeah, like
Yeah.
with the shellfish ordinance,
Yeah.
where if the
So
town
it's
has an
per-
ordinance that.
All right,
Permissive.
to your point, we gotta close this meeting for the next meeting.